I'm Glenn Hubbard, the Dean of the school. It is a huge treat for me and for my colleagues tonight to welcome you to this first Nand and G. Khemka Distinguished Speaker Forum on the subject of making respect more respectable in the corporate world. I will give a proper introduction to our distinguished guest, Mr. Murthy, in a moment. But I wanted to say a little bit about how this series fits in with what we're trying to do at Columbia Business School. Globalization has become a sort of buzzword in many businesses and universities. To us at the school, it has two elements. One is about inhaling, and the other about exhaling. And by inhaling, I mean bringing the great talent and leaders of the world to our community here. Our speaker tonight is clearly in that model. By exhaling, I mean taking the ideas, the talent, and the network of Columbia Business School on the road. I'm pleased to remind you, or to tell you if you don't know, that the school is very active on both fronts. We've just received a very large gift from the Templeton Foundation to support a new program at the business school on Indian economic policies. My colleague Arvind Panagaria, who's here, will be working with Jagdish Bhagwati, myself, and others on that program under the auspices of our Chazen Institute. We have long been very active in trying to take our students to India, to different elements of the Indian business community in IT, in finance, and in commerce. We have a very successful partnership with the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, where students there will come to Columbia Business School for classes, and we have student exchanges there and faculty case writing projects. We have a number of very significant initiatives in the MBA program on bringing Indian business cases to Columbia. I've reminded our faculty, something that they're tired of hearing me say, that I want the Columbia Business School experience to look like global GDP, which means the representation and all the teaching elements needs to look like global GDP, and I think we are doing a very good job there. Our students have done an incredible job through the South Asian Business Association of having a series of Indian business conferences that have drawn very significant leaders from India and investors in India. We also just had a case competition at the school that centered on a business not quite so prominent as our speakers, but perhaps with a great deal of cachet, cricket, and the Indian Cricket League. And so we were very benefited to have Mr. Modi's help in constructing a wonderful case for our competition and the MBA program. Our distinguished speaker tonight needs no introduction, but I shall give him one anyway, and happily so. Narayana Murthy is the chairman of the board and the chief mentor of Infosys Technologies Limited. Infosys is now a household word. It is so because of Mr. Murthy's great efforts. Infosys is, of course, one of the world's leading consulting and software services providers. He founded this wonderful company in 1981, along with 6 other software professionals, and served as its CEO for 21 years before handing over the reins in March 2002. Under his leadership, Infosys was listed on NASDAQ in 1999. My colleague Bruce Kogut was just telling me that he had the opportunity perhaps to try to buy in early on and missed it. Sorry to have to tell that story, Bruce. Mr. Murthy has articulated, designed, and implemented the global delivery model that's become the foundation for what we now know as significant success in IT services, outsourcing. He's the recipient of honors and awards far too numerous for me to mention, but I would note that The Economist magazine ranked him 8th in the list of the 15 most admired global leaders in 2005, and has been repeatedly honored as a very respected business leader by the Financial Times and by Time magazine. And I think the audience in this room tonight is a great testimony to his leadership. He has his undergraduate degree in electrical engineering. We share that in common. I strayed and became an economist. He did something much more socially useful. And he has his MTech also in electrical engineering. Please join me in welcoming for our inaugural Nandanjit Khemka Lecture, Mr. Narayana Murthy.
Dean, faculty, alumni, students, and guests. I consider it a great privilege and a pleasure to deliver the first lecture in this series. I am thankful to my friend Nand Khemka and his family for this honor. Columbia is a preeminent university with over 250 years of history. Your business school is one of the oldest and the best known business schools in the world. Thanks to my friend, Professor Sri Kumar Rao, an adjunct professor here, I've had the pleasure of speaking to the Columbia MBA students several years ago. I thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity of coming back to this wonderful school. The organizers wanted me to speak on a topic that has relevance to the economic and business policy in India. After much thought, I have decided to speak on a fundamental issue that has relevance to businesses in India, in the United States, and in fact in the whole world. Given that we live in an interconnected world that has embraced globalization, seen tremendous advances in communications, and that has had an increased focus on universal concerns such as multicultural workforce, carbon emission, and laissez-faire capitalism, any strategic issue that has relevance to India must have value to the United States and vice versa. Therefore, I want to speak on how the future leaders of businesses in various parts of the world can save capitalism from the wheelers and dealers, restore its glory, and leverage its power to make this a better world for you and me and for everybody else. I believe that the primary remedy in doing so is restoring the value of respect in the boardrooms and in the corner offices. Our task is to make respect much more aspirational than money and power among our future corporate leaders. Hence the title of this lecture, and that is Making Respect More Respectable. The speech will have three parts. First, I will define the relevance of capitalism even in today's context of deep skepticism. Second, I will talk about the various reasons why there is so much skepticism about capitalism. And finally, I will suggest a few ideas to you, the future business leaders, to make respect more important than money and power. A few years ago, I was talking to a well-known business school professor here in this country about some highly improbable but decidedly impactful changes I have seen in the world during the last 20 years. The fall of Berlin Wall, collapse of communism, and the end of apartheid in South Africa. Being the wise man that he is, he smiled and said that I would live to see many more such events. Little did I realize then that I would be a witness to the cataclysmic events that have happened since September 2008, the massive financial tsunami that has led to the fall of several major financial institutions, the shenanigans of the disciples of the god of greed, the multi-trillion-dollar recovery packages by various governments, equity participation in major private sector institutions like the Citibank, the AIG, the RBS and Barclays by the US and UK governments, the failure of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the unimaginable book-cooking scandal of inflated revenues and fabricating profits and cash balances by the founder at Satyam, once a respected and today a disgraced software services company from India, fortunately saved by the timely efforts of the government of India. First, let me answer the question whether capitalism needs to be preserved. According to most dictionaries, capitalism is an economic system in which investment in and ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange of wealth is made possible and is maintained chiefly by private individuals or corporations. It is a system that incentivizes individuals to use their enterprise, drive, hard work, and innovation to create wealth for themselves and for the society. It is also a system that is most conducive to creation of jobs and elimination of poverty. Other political systems like communism and socialism practiced by most developing countries during the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s have indeed failed to deliver on their promise. They fail in one fundamental premise of development, and that is individuals need incentives to create wealth and jobs for the society. This is where capitalism has succeeded eminently. Even China, ostensibly a communist country, has practiced indirect state-directed capitalism and made stunning progress. We see a similar example in Vietnam, also a communist nation. In India, there are several examples of shift towards capitalism. India's teledensity, a measure of the number of telephone connections per 100 persons, increased from 0.7 in 1991 when the highly controlled and socialist economy was liberalized to 37 today. This was primarily driven by large-scale private sector participation and adoption of mobile telephony. Thus, in my opinion, there is no alternative to capitalism to ensure better prosperity in both the developed and the developing world. Is everything hunky-dory with this elixir for poverty reduction and prosperity? Why has it become a fate? Why is it then that even in this mono-ideological world, there are currents of disenchantment with capitalism? Why are our corporate leaders the least trusted people in the world today? I believe there are several reasons for this. Greed has played a major part in this drama. Headlines and statements like CEOs earn big bonuses in a bad year, CEOs look at public companies like personal ATMs, 5 biggest lies on the Wall Street, and a Satyam scam, a shame for the nation, have brought the attitude of corporate chieftains and boards to the front burner and have shocked the public and the average worker alike. The propensity of a few senior management professionals in large US corporations to sell large chunks of their own stocks based on insider information while promising a rosy picture of performance of their crumbling corporations to outsiders has indeed tarnished their image seriously for 3 reasons. 1, It is patently unfair and illegal to resort to such insider trading. We all know that. It results in the destruction of the corporation. Data points to that. And it depletes the savings of the employees, as most of their savings are in 401k funds, which are invested in the stocks of these corporations. Greed has been portrayed as good. The practice of CEOs arguing that a certain merger or acquisition is good for the corporation and then demanding retention bonuses after the merger is yet another example of the insincerity and greed of the CEOs. The huge severance compensation awarded to the failed CEOs has created tremendous loss of faith in the fairness and accountability of boards. I am sure many of you who have watched the CNBC's award-winning primetime series, American Greed, that portrays a compelling description of the greed, treachery, dishonesty, fraud, profligacy, and debauchery using corporate money, can indeed appreciate the levels to which these apostles of greed can sink. The mindset today has become one of equating being truthful with not being caught when telling a lie. The words of Gordon Gekko, a ruthless corporate raider played by Michael Douglas, that greed is good, greed is right, and greed works, seems to have become a gospel on the Wall Street. A prominent business writer has even called such CEOs fiscal terrorists. The second reason is the prevalence of inequity in corporate compensation worldwide. An example of the unfairness of compensation is the fact that the top 5 officers of major US public corporations extracted as much as $500 billion, or roughly 9% of the profits of these corporations during the last 10 years. An even more worrisome trend is that there is no accountability in compensations, since their pay is not linked to performance, and several high-profile CEOs received huge compensation during a period when their corporations were hurting and not performing. The average pay of CEOs in the US was estimated to be about 340 times that of the average pay of a worker in 2007. In other words, CEOs earned in one day what an average worker would take almost a year to earn. Equate, an executive compensation research firm located in Redwood Shores, California, has published data on such contracts that do not meet the usual norms of fairness, transparency, and accountability. Another reason is the total disregard of truth and unbridled avarice. The case of Satyam, as stated by the founder himself, is shocking. According to a letter that Mr. Raju, the founder, wrote to the Securities and Exchange Board of India on the day he resigned, he admitted to inflating revenues and cooking profits for over 6 to 7 years just to make sure that his stock price held up. As revealed by subsequent investigations, he had either sold or mortgaged most of his shares for loans that he had taken to support his other private businesses. The Ponzi scheme of Bernard Madoff, resulting in fabricated gains of almost $65 billion over a decade or so, is yet another blot on the reputation of fund managers. The inability of Enron's Kenneth Lay, Jeff Skilling, and Andy Fastow to answer the question of reporters Bethany McLean and Peter Elkin, both of whom had the guts to ask tough questions on how Enron made money, and their bullying these reporters are examples of the hubris, arrogance, and utter disregard for truth exhibited by the corporate baggers in this corporate world. Is there a solution to this seemingly unsolvable problem? I am an optimist, and I believe we can succeed in our effort. There are two dimensions to solving this problem. The first is, of course, reforms in regulation at the institutional level. Such reforms are indeed necessary, but not sufficient conditions. For example, after Enron, we have had the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, as well as several other changes in regulations in the US demanding better transparency and accountability. In India, we have had several committees on corporate governance, including a committee headed by me to improve the level of honesty and decency amongst corporate leaders. However, they did not prevent a major violation of corporate governance like the Satyam scandal. The number of pages in the accounting standards manuals has increased significantly, both in the United States and in India during the last 10 years. But we continue to see major violations. The crooks seem to be always a step ahead of the regulators. Hence, tackling this problem just at the level of institutional regulations alone will not suffice. The second dimension is enhancing the value compliance of corporate leaders. In my opinion, any system of regulation and compliance is as good as the people who are governed by it. The future of any corporation, I believe, is as good as the value system of the leaders and followers in the corporation. Let me give you a compelling example. In the 1970s, a friend of mine designed a computerized machine maintenance information system for a government workshop in one of the states of an emerging country. After a couple of years, he was told that the system was malfunctioning. His team reviewed the working of the programs of the system and found them to be in order. After putting the storekeeper to a thorough cross-examination, my friend came to know that there was indeed a scam. Whenever there was a request to the storekeeper, from the personal assistant to the minister in charge of the workshop, for funds for minister's entertainment, a certain spare part would be shown as faulty in one of the machines. That part would be debited to the machine even though the machine was in perfect condition. The part would be sold in the market and the money would be handed over to the minister's assistant. When the demand from the minister became frequent, the spare part consumption soared. It required a smart engineer to conclude that the system was not working well, and my friend's team had to conduct a thorough investigation to unearth the scam. Therefore, I'm a firm believer that a corporation is what its people are. As Thoreau once said, and I quote him, "It is truly enough said that a corporation has no conscience, but a corporation of conscientious men is indeed a corporation with a conscience," unquote. That is why I believe that an important step in solving the problem of poor corporate governance is enhancing the desire for respectability among the men and women who populate the corporations of this world. Hence, the solution to the vexing problem of raising the prestige of corporate leaders rests on creating a mindset that puts premium on earning respect from the society and that defines success as going beyond just seeking money and power. Therefore, you, the future business leaders, have to believe and act according to the words of my friend John Huntsman, the chair of the Board of Overseers at Wharton, and his words are, "Winners never cheat, and that decent, honorable people finish races and their lives in grand style and with respect." Whenever I have any doubt about any action I have to take, I go back to his wonderful book, Winners Never Cheat. I suggest that every one of you buy this wonderful book and use it as your Pentateuch or Bible or Gita or Quran in your moments of dilemma. Since you're all destined to become leaders of major corporations in various parts of the world, I will suggest a few simple solutions to enhancing your desire for respect and urge to give them your consideration. First, create a good culture around you. To me, decent behavior stems from an environment of good culture surrounding a person. What is culture? Culture is about things that bring you joy and sorrow. It is about your priorities in life. It is about how you spend your time and money. It is about the kind of friends you have. And it is about the kind of issues that excite you. In essence, culture is how I behave when I know nobody is watching me. Hence, it is important to create a culture of openness, fairness, honesty, decency, transparency, and accountability in a corporation. Such a culture is likely to discourage greed, fraud, and misdemeanor. Creating such a culture requires that you lead by example. As Mahatma Gandhi said, and I quote him, and he said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world," unquote. So you have to take lead in creating such a culture around you. This task has to start right from day one and cannot wait till you become the CEO. Second, cultivate simple and inexpensive habits. My father, who was a high school teacher, teaching physics, mathematics, and English for most of his life, used to tell us, his children, that the best way of overcoming greed is to derive pleasure and spend time on small, simple, and inexpensive habits in life. He also believed that the best habits in life were inexpensive. Therefore, he would urge us to read books. This is late 50s and early 60s. We didn't have television, even radio was not easy, etc. So his precept was to read books, to listen to music, and enjoy conversation with good people. In the early 60s in India, every small town had a public library from where you could borrow books free. You could go there and read magazines. You could go there and read journals. Second, every small town had a public park where music would be played every evening, and that was free. And finally, there was no tax then and even today on having good conversation with decent friends. Therefore, I urge you to cultivate simple habits that bring you joy and happiness and cost little. Third, do not equate success with money and power. Today, success in corporate circles is most often equated with money and power. This is also a key reason for corporate leaders to become greedy. We glorify corporate leaders appearing in popular lists like World's Top 100 Billionaires or World's 100 Most Powerful Lead Persons, published by leading magazines. Do we have a list to venerate World's 100 Most Respected Persons? The real success, my friend, is not about money or power. I know several billionaire friends, and I have met several national leaders who are not happy. I have met several film actors and actresses, both in India and in Hollywood, who are rich and famous, but are rarely happy because they are lonely, crave acceptance from their circles, and believe they are not successful. That brings me to an important question. What is success? To me, success is the acceptance by the circle of your family, friends, your office mates, and your community that you are indeed valuable. That value does not come from your wealth, it does not come from your intelligence, but it comes from your ability to use all of that for public good. It comes from your generosity. Generosity to share what little you have, and generosity to bring joy to people. To me, a successful person lights up the eyes of people and brings smile to their faces when he or she enters a room. Success is also about having good sleep every night. Let's remember the words of Senator William Fulbright, who said, and I quote him, "It is not our affluence, it is not our plumbing, it is not our clogged freeways that grip the imagination of other countries. Rather, it is the values upon which our system is built," unquote. Now let me come to the fourth precept. Create an environment of happiness around you. He is happiest, be he the king or a peasant, who finds peace in his home, said Johann von Goethe. A happy leader has a circle of supportive family and friends. They share in your joy, cheer you in your marathon, applaud you in your success, and commiserate with you in your sorrow. Building such a circle requires a lot of emotional investment on your part. You have to learn to give back in good measure. You have to be present to celebrate their moments of glory and to provide your shoulders for them to cry on when they are down. You have to put your personal interests behind the interests of your loved ones. You have to level with them at all times. You cannot play games with your loved ones. I do not know of anybody who is a demon in his office and an angel at home. You are the same everywhere. It is not easy to turn off your bad qualities in a jiffy. They ooze out from your mindset. That is why it is important to eschew greed, selfishness, intrigue, and opacity in your dealings in the office, at home, among friends, and in the community. As you know, the families, friends, and the office mates of most of the villains of corporate frauds were unhappy with them. Fifth, don't get fixated on extreme desire. Desire is the root cause of all sorrow, said Bhagavan Buddha. While it is natural to have normal urges in life, extreme fixation with possession of material things is what leads to greed. It is such fixation that leads us to fraud and acts that we would later regret. Sixth, shun jealousy. Jealousy is, in essence, another form of greed. Jealousy is a rationalization of your failure vis-a-vis another person's success or achievement. Jealousy burns our own stomach and will not affect the other person. Jealousy does not help us to take constructive steps to improve our own performance. Jealousy leads us to do things we would later regret. When I was a child, I remember my mother urging me to just look at my own plate while eating and not to look at my brother's. She would urge me to eat all that I could digest rather than feel bad that my brother was eating more than what I did. Seventh, maintain transparency and develop a sense of humility. Whenever you have any doubt about your interactions, it is best to consult your well-wishers, your spouse, family, children, and friends. Most often, such consultation will help you avoid disasters. After all, they all want you to succeed. That is, they want you to be good-natured, to be happy, to be contented, to be healthy, and hopefully prosperous. That's why it is best to practice the adage, when in doubt, disclose with your family, friends, and in your workplace. Such a mindset will help us to develop humility. Humility is about admitting that I could be wrong and that there could be other people who are better than me. Humility leads to open-mindedness and transparency and helps teamwork. More importantly, humility helps you avoid hubris. Hubris is what leads people to disaster. Finally, take part in a charitable activity in your spare time. This will put you among people that have elevated their desires beyond possessing the next mansion or the next $1 million. The opportunity to meet generous people outside the hierarchy of your organization is a sure way of escaping the orbit of jealousy and intrigue at least a part of your time. Making a difference to people less fortunate than yourself and building a great future for institutions like your alma mater will make you a happier and a more satisfied person. Knowing this wonderful business school, I have no doubt at all that you will all strive to live up to the expectations of the society and form a new generation of corporate leaders who stand for the best values. I will close with a favorite quotation of mine from President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, and I quote him, "Americanism means the virtues of courage, honor, justice, truth, sincerity, and hardihood." That is, the virtues that made America. The things that will destroy America are prosperity at any cost, the love of soft living, and the get-rich-quick theory of life, unquote. These are truly immortal words that hold good for all societies, all nations, at all points of time. May you all succeed in living up to these famous words. Thank you very much.